This is the Terracotta Army. 8,000 warriors buried over 2,000 years ago. One of the greatest wonders of the world.
In the heart of Xi'an, buried beneath layers of earth and secrecy, stands one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of all time, the Terracotta Army. Thousands of life-sized warriors, each with unique faces, guard the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. Their creation has long been celebrated as a triumph of ancient Chinese artistry, but recent findings have raised a series of puzzling questions. How did artisans with no history of sculpting human figures suddenly master such realism? Could there be a hidden chapter in this story, one that involves an unexpected foreign hand? What if the East wasn't working alone? Sculpted by the East, mirroring the West. When archaeologists first laid eyes on the Terracotta Army, buried under the soil of Xi'an, they were stunned. Not just by the size, though 8,000 life-sized warriors is no small feat, but by the realism. Each statue has a distinct expression, body type, even hairstyle. What was once considered purely a masterpiece of ancient Chinese craftsmanship slowly sparked a different question in the minds of some researchers. Could there have been outside influence? Specifically, was the genius behind the Terracotta Army partially borrowed from the West, especially ancient Greece? This idea, while bold, gained serious momentum when mitochondrial DNA testing in Xinjiang revealed traces of European ancestry dating back to the time of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. That alone didn't raise eyebrows, but the timing did. These Western genetic traces appeared during the exact era the massive tomb complex was being built. Suddenly, what had seemed like an isolated cultural marvel started to look like a possible product of ancient global exchange. It wasn't long before the theory of Greek involvement started making headlines and stirring controversy. One of the most vocal supporters of the idea was Li Shuzhen, a senior archaeologist involved with the site. She noted that the detailed realism in the warriors, and other figures like dancers and acrobats, might have been inspired by ancient Greek sculpture. This view wasn't entirely far-fetched. After all, Greek art had long been known for its hyper-realistic depictions of the human form. And the timing lined up. Following the death of Alexander the Great, Greek culture had spread as far east as modern-day Pakistan. Could it have reached even further, all the way into the Chinese heartland? Li's remarks spread like wildfire. Western media, thrilled at the idea of ancient Greeks reaching China 1,500 years before Marco Polo, jumped on the story. But the excitement was met with quick resistance. Chinese authorities were not impressed. Zhang Weixing, director of the Emperor Qin Shi Huang's Mausoleum Site Museum, flatly denied any Greek connection, stating there was no substantial evidence for such contact. Not long after, Li herself walked her comments back, clarifying that while Western inspiration was possible, the statues were undeniably the work of Chinese hands. And yet, art historian Lucas Nickel offered another puzzle piece. He believed the Chinese artisans may have learned techniques from a Greek sculptor who traveled east. While he never claimed Greeks carved the statues, Nickel proposed that someone with Greek training may have helped local artists learn new techniques. He pointed to the sudden leap in Chinese sculptural style. Before the Terracotta Army, there was no tradition of life-size statuary in China. Then, within a short window of time, they went from nothing to creating thousands of detailed, lifelike figures. This theory, however, touches a nerve that runs deeper than just archaeology. Western interpretations of ancient art have often leaned on a colonial mindset, one that assumes complex achievements in non-European civilizations must have come from European influence. The idea that only Greek or Roman artists could create great art shaped centuries of scholarship. Similar claims have been made about African and Asian civilizations. Explorers dismissed the Zimbabwe ruins as too advanced for African builders, while others insisted the Olmec heads of Mesoamerica couldn't have been crafted by native hands without outside help. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, European scholars often interpreted unfamiliar customs and technologies through a Greek lens. Even funeral rites or household structures were sometimes linked back to ancient Greece, not because of solid evidence, but because of a stubborn belief that Europe was the fountainhead of all innovation. This mindset didn't just distort history, it erased the ingenuity of countless civilizations. The concept of Greco-Buddhist art, for example, was developed during British rule in India and suggested that ancient Buddhist art had to be influenced by Greek aesthetics to be graceful or refined. Back in China, though, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang remains one of the greatest archaeological achievements of the ancient world. Spanning over 38 square miles, the underground complex includes not only soldiers, but horses, chariots, musicians, and even court entertainers. It was built with astonishing speed and precision. And while theories swirl around the potential presence of Greek artisans, the sheer scale and ambition of the project firmly roots it in the world of imperial China. These statues were meant to protect the emperor in the afterlife. That's not a Greek idea. That's the logic of a ruler obsessed with legacy and control. Still, one detail stands out. The Chinese sculptors, who had never produced life-sized statues before, suddenly began crafting thousands with anatomical precision and individual features. Something shifted, whether it was outside inspiration or a rapid burst of innovation born from intense imperial pressure. When paired with the DNA evidence of Western presence in the same time and region, it becomes difficult to ignore the possibility of some kind of cultural cross-pollination. Yet no theory matters more than the will of the man who ordered it all. The emperor who built his own afterlife. When Qin Shi Huang took the throne at just 13 years old, he wasn't thinking about ruling a peaceful kingdom. He was already planning his afterlife. The boy who would become China's first emperor didn't just want to be remembered. He wanted to be feared, obeyed, and immortalized. As soon as he came into power, he ordered the construction of a massive tomb unlike anything the world had seen. While other rulers focused on palaces and armies, Qin was digging into the earth, carving out a kingdom of clay and mystery. After searching across the land, he chose the shadowy slopes of Lishan Mountain as the resting place for his dream. The site was perfect for what he had in mind: a sprawling underground complex that would mirror his empire above ground. The goal was simple, but chilling. He wanted to take his world with him, including the people. Historical accounts suggest that he initially planned to bury thousands of boys and girls alive alongside him. But one man had the courage to challenge him: his prime minister, Li Si. Li Si understood the danger of such a command. Killing so many innocents would spark a civil uprising the emperor might not live to suppress. So he came up with an idea. Instead of sacrificing real humans, why not create lifelike clay figures to serve the emperor in the afterlife? The suggestion struck a chord with Qin Shi Huang. He approved the plan, but made it clear that the warriors had to be exact replicas of his imperial guard. They weren't just statues. They were supposed to be loyal soldiers, frozen in time, who would protect him forever. That order set off one of the most ambitious artistic efforts in ancient history. Thousands of artisans were summoned from all corners of the empire. They were expected to sculpt life-sized human forms, but none of them had ever attempted anything like it. Making pottery animals and household vessels was one thing. Building entire human bodies from clay was something else entirely. When their early attempts failed, frustration grew, and in typical Qin fashion, the response was brutal. 100 artisans were executed for their failure to meet expectations. The turning point came not through genius, but desperation. One of the condemned artisans gave his son a final piece of advice: kiln the body parts separately, then assemble them. His son, determined to honor his father's last words, tried the method, and it worked. Slowly the figures came together, piece by piece, until one complete warrior stood tall. The breakthrough changed everything. The craftsmen now had a system. They worked tirelessly, day and night, driven by both fear and the thrill of success. What followed was the creation of an army so grand that it would remain hidden underground for over 2,000 years. But for the emperor, even that wasn't enough. The warriors were only a part of the tomb's vast design. Bronze chariots, Stables, entertainers, and court officials were also sculpted in detail. The tomb itself is said to contain rivers of mercury and a ceiling painted with stars. Though the main burial chamber remains sealed, its mythical descriptions paint a picture of a man who saw death not as the end, but as a continuation of his reign. Power, in his mind, could follow him into eternity. After the emperor's death, the construction came to a sudden and tragic halt. His son, Qin inherited the empire and the unfinished tomb. Following his father's wishes, he held a grand ceremony to honor the workers. But there was no reward. As the workers entered the tomb, the doors were sealed behind them. The emperor wanted no witnesses, no survivors. Only one man is said to have escaped, the son of the artisan who built the first successful warrior. He vanished into the countryside and lived out his days crafting simple pottery, far from the politics and bloodshed of the empire. That chilling story still lingers in the air of Xi'an. While thousands of tourists visit the Terracotta Army each year, most have no idea about the cost at which it was created. Behind the museum glass and spotlighted warriors lies a story of obsession, sacrifice, and quiet rebellion. Every clay face that stares back at you carries the weight of that history, and deep below the surface, the emperor still waits in silence. But the warriors may be just one chapter in a much older story of global connection. When East met West. We're often told that Marco Polo was the first to bridge East and West, but history might have played that hand far too late. Long before Venice ever dreamed of sending envoys to Asia, Greeks, Romans, and Chinese were already eyeing one another from opposite ends of the world. Silk flowed out of China and into the hands of Hellenistic kings. Meanwhile, horses with Persian bloodlines thundered eastward. Somewhere in the dust of those ancient roads, cultures collided in quiet, powerful ways, trading not only goods but ideas. For the Greeks, China first appeared as a land of mystery and silk. They called it Serica, after the word for silk, and saw its goods as treasures from a world just beyond the map's edge. Ancient Greek texts speak of Ceres, the silk people, and describe lands bathed in wealth and discipline. What's striking is how often these descriptions got it right, despite the vast distances. It suggests that the ancient world was not as disconnected as we often think. Bits of knowledge passed hand to hand, from traveler to trader, across deserts and seas, until they arrived as whispers in royal courts. On the other side, the Chinese referred to the West using names like Da Qin, Li Jian, and Fu Lin, labels that often pointed to Roman and Greek-speaking territories. Greek cities thrived in Bactria and Gandhara, where they built temples, coined currency, and even mingled with Buddhist monks. Some Chinese sources mention embassies from Da Qin, arriving with goods, medicines, and maps. These weren't distant rumors. They were direct accounts, recorded in official Chinese texts, of interactions with empires that spoke different tongues, but shared an interest in exchange. What may surprise many is how much of this contact revolved around medicine, astronomy, and art. The famous technique of cupping, now tied to traditional Chinese healing, first appeared in Greek medical texts centuries earlier. Archaeological digs have uncovered Greek glass, coins, and tools across China's western provinces. These aren't vague possibilities. They're physical proof that conversations between civilizations had already begun, long before the Silk Road got its name. The real question isn't whether East met West. It's how much they recognized each other in the process. The Terracotta Army, with its startling realism, may very well be part of that silent dialogue, shaped by hands and ideas that traveled farther than we ever thought possible. The Terracotta Army still holds secrets beneath its silent gaze. If foreign hands truly shaped its legacy, what else have we overlooked in history's oldest empires? Could our understanding of the ancient world be missing a vital link? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe for more mysteries that rewrite everything you thought you knew.